And so to mysteriously and by the twists of fate to wind up in Hot Tuna and then
I got a great podcast episode for you. I got to talk with Michael Falzarano, and he really dives deep into how this Long Island kid ended up in San Francisco and played with some of the great talents that he loved over the years. Check it out.
right.
Hey, everybody, I'm really excited about today's guest. He's originally from Copeg, Long Island, living in Texas, 50
Uh,
years
yep.
in the business. I want to welcome Mike Falzarano to the
Oh,
Long Island Sound Podcast. Welcome, Mike.
oh, thanks for having me. It's always good to be doing something on Long Island, and I do a lot on Long Island, but this sounds like it could be fun.
Well, I appreciate that. And the one thing that I'm amazed about is the wellspring of talent that comes from Long Island. I know that sounds like a quirky thing, but to find that you were a Copeg guy, you're
Right.
now in Texas, and your amazing journey of playing with Jorma Kaukonen and Hot Tuna and New Riders of the Purple Sage. We'll get into all of that.
Right.
But I got to ask you something.
Yeah.
I think you were born in Brooklyn. You went to Manhattan and then Long Island. Tell me about
Well,
or tell me how it happened. Uh-huh.
I grew up in Copeg, all my formative years from like, I don't know, the formative years. And
Okay.
then eventually I traveled around a little bit, but I eventually moved to San Francisco
Right.
in 1977, you know, just as everything was exploding musically. The San Francisco jam band scene wasn't called the jam band scene then. It was just the psychedelic scene was
Right.
happening. Punk rock was happening. New wave it was all happening,
So I got to ask you this: were you playing music here in the New York area, and were there some great haunts that you recall? And what drew you out to San Francisco?
Okay, first things first. Let's talk
Yeah.
about my time on Long Island.
All
Okay,
right. Sure.
so when I was coming up on Long Island, there were, in the, let's say, I'm guessing early 70s now,
Okay.
there were a lot of places to play. A lot of great bands were out there playing. It was like West Houston, Stanton Anderson,
Sure.
Mississippi Sheiks, Volunteers who became Zen Tricksters, Desperate Men. Bill McEwen was the first guy I saw play fingerstyle guitar, and they were all playing in a lot of places. I was playing the same places, like the Right Track Inn, and I
Right.
can't remember them all
In
now, but
Freeport. Yeah.
I played them all. And my favorite place on Long Island to play was the Barge. I don't know if anybody remembers the Barge. It was out in the Hamptons, right?
Okay.
And it was an actual barge. So when you started your show and it was high tide, the barge was like this.
Right.
But either it starts the show like this and then high tide comes in, or as high tide goes out, the barge went like the whole stage. You're like, ah. That was a fun place to play. And so, and while playing all these places on Long Island, I had a band called the New Highway Blues and Boogie Band,
Okay.
and we played all the same places everybody else played, Arthur's, Right Track, and all that.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah.
and then and
Well,
I
I
was
got to
playing,
I got to interrupt you
yeah,
really
yeah,
quick,
yeah,
Mike.
yeah,
Is you mentioned two bands that I'm familiar with, the Sheiks
yeah.
and West Houston's All
Right,
Star Space Band.
that's right,
That's where I know Mike Nugent from
that's
because
right,
he played in both those bands. Another
right.
great blues guy.
Yeah,
Anyway, so
like I said, there were a couple of other bands that were sort of interrelated to those bands at the time. To
okay.
me, I looked up to those bands because they were a little older in
Right.
age, and they looked professional to me. West Houston, Stanton Anderson, Mississippi Sheiks, the Desperate Men, and Bill McHugh. They all looked like they were probably 1 year older than I was,
Right. Right.
or 2 years older, but they seemed like they really had it together.
Wow.
you know. So, and that's pretty much what I was playing in, or what I was playing in all these clubs that I was playing on Long Island was my two favorite bands, the New Riders of the Purple Sage and Hot Tuna,
Right.
the music of the Grateful Dead, Commander Cody, and some Jefferson Airplane, and the stuff of the day that everybody was playing. But
Right.
mainly, I was a Hot Tuna guy, and a New Riders guy because I'm sort of a country rocker and a
Hmm.
blues guy.
Yep. Yep.
And so that's what I was doing. And so to mysteriously and by the twists of fate to wind up in Hot Tuna and then in the New Riders of the Purple Sage
Right.
was pretty mind boggling to me when it was all happening. And it's still mind boggling to me.
So what was the impetus, or did you get an invitation to go out to San Francisco? I mean, that's a
Yeah.
huge move, really.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it's a huge move. I was at that time in my late 20s,
Okay.
and what had happened was I was dating a girl from Copic, and she was younger than I was, and she wanted to go to college,
All
and
right.
she had heard that if you lived in San Francisco for a year, you can go to college for free. So
Right.
she
Right.
decided that she was going to go there, and she had some friends there, and so she did. And she was there a year or two, maybe three, I don't know.
Okay.
And so we were talking, in her time there, she went there. She got a couple of corporate jobs, just to keep the money coming in, and so
Sure.
she can go to school. And then she got offered a job managing a hair salon called Mr. Broadway. And it
Okay.
just so happens that at Mr. Broadway, all the rock stars from San Francisco would go there to get their hair cut.
All right.
Yorma, Jack, some of the Grateful Dead guys, Carlos Santana, and so she got to meet all these people. So we're
Wow.
talking about this, and she says to me, what are you doing? I'm not really doing that much anymore here. I'm kind of bored. She says, you should come to San Francisco and check it out.
Right.
I met Jorma Kaukonen. I met Jack Cassidy. I know these people. I know their wives. And I go, yeah, okay. So it was like a whim, like, okay, let's go.
Uh-huh.
And I was going to go for a month or something. I wound up staying for 10 years. Uh, yeah, that's how that happened. And so, shortly thereafter, one thing leads to another. She introduced me to Yorma, to Jack, it was
Wow.
kind of one funny time. I went to get my haircut at Mr. Broadway, and I'm sitting in the chair,
Right.
and the guy's talking to me, and then I realize, hey, that's Mickey Hart over there, and that's Carlos Santana over
Oh,
there.
come on.
I realize I'm in a different world here now. Yeah,
Wait, you know what, Mike? What's so amazing
yeah,
to me about that is, if you look at a hairdresser and a bartender, they have those
right.
intimate conversations sometimes when they're cutting the
Yeah,
hair, and the fact
well,
that those circle of people
yeah,
you got by chance pulled into is
yeah,
really,
yeah. And
and
so,
then you get to play with them.
yeah. Well, then what happened was, over a course of a period of time,
Uh huh.
Yerm and I became friends. And then we started, playing music together. I had a band. He had Hot Tuna had taken a break from
Okay.
'77 when I got there to '83 when I joined the band. Norm and Jack went their separate ways. And
Right.
so, if I had a gig or he had a gig, we'd meet up at his place late at night. We'd jam for a while and we'd do that. And so we built up a friendship so that when, you know, uh, Hot Tuna was thinking, or Yorma and Jack were thinking about uh, getting back together and doing a tour.
Hmm.
I was asked to join, which in itself was so surreal thing that happened that I wound up playing in a band that I admired and played the music of not that far away, like maybe
Right.
4 years before. Yeah.
Wow. Mike, I got to ask you this.
Yeah.
What was it about Yorma's playing or Yorma's music that really kind of floated your boat to say, I really like this stuff? What's unique about him?
Well, first of all, I was introduced, like most people, to Hot Tuna with the first acoustic record, right?
Right.
And I thought, I didn't really have a picture in my mind of how that was executed yet because I
Hmm.
hadn't seen him do it. And
Right.
so to me, it was just sound like, I don't know, it sounds like maybe there's two guitar players. I don't know. I can't really tell what's going on here because he's finger picking.
Oh, right. Right.
So I was intrigued by that. And I like the songs. For me, it's always about the song,
Right.
more so than, okay, that guy's a really flashy guitar player, can do this. It doesn't really throw me that much if if the flashy guitar player is not the foundation's not a really great song.
Right.
But I like the songs. So that was part of that. And we started playing some of those songs, in our own inevitable way. We couldn't do it
Right.
like that, but we take the songs and we play it like that. Same thing with the New Riders. Um, and then the next album came out and it was the acoustic stuff played electrically. And that's what I was doing. I was playing this acoustic
Okay.
stuff on electric guitars and making it loud. And I realized, oh, this must really be a thing. And so that I just kind of like that thing. And that's what drew me to it.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is, picking up or not knowing about the sound that's coming from finger picking.
Right.
and how you can bring it from an acoustic guitar to an electric guitar.
Right.
I think I'm thinking of Mark Knopfler now in the
Yeah.
way that he picks and goes through songs, and it gives the song such a different character, and I think it lends itself to the song
Right.
instead of
Right.
pulling away from the song.
When Yorma and Jack first put that first record out, those were songs that Yorma had been playing solo for many years, you know.
Okay.
And they're all they were kind of traditional songs, and then he wrote a couple in the same sort of tradition.
Hmm.
And so as things get bigger and bigger and stuff was getting louder and louder, then he decided, well, I maybe just do it on the electric guitar, you know?
Right.
And, you know, I think there's a charm to both of them. I mean, some of those songs to me work better on the acoustic guitar than they do electrically. And then over time, I think Hot Tuna developed into the monster electric band that they became in 74 to 77.
Right.
And I would go see them a lot during that period in all the Comac Arena, the Palladium in New York, or the Sound of Music, I think it was called then. Like I said, one thing led to another, and there I was.
So to give me the chronology,
Yeah,
you spent 20 years with Hot Tuna,
that's correct.
and you've toured Europe.
Right,
I'm always curious because I've never seen a concert in Europe.
right.
What is there a difference in the audience, or anything kind of memorable that sticks out in your mind about touring Hot Tuna in Europe?
Yeah, absolutely. But let me
Okay,
clear this up. I
sure.
spent my span in Hot Tuna was 20 years. We started in 83.
Okay,
And then that went to early 84. And then we didn't really do anything with Yorma and Jack went back to being Yorma and Jack, a duet, you know.
okay,
And then somewhere late 80s, early 90s, like 1990, I believe it was, I then rejoined Hot Tuna. Not that I ever went up, I would never
right.
got fired or anything like that, but we got the band back together, so to speak. And then we went on the road for the rest of the 90s into the early 2000s.
Wow,
So it wasn't a consecutive 20 years, but the span was 20 years.
gotcha. I'm with
You
you.
know, and the thing that I found pretty interesting is lately I went back and looked, and it seemed like in 83 when we got that band together, it seemed like it was only like a dozen shows. And then I realized I counted them up. It was like almost 50 shows in
Oh
two
my
months,
God.
you know. And we played everywhere you could possibly imagine, including the Nassau Coliseum with Bobby and the Midnights.
Yeah.
And that was a sold out show. And then things, progressed from there. But in the 90s, we started touring around. We went to Japan. We went to just a lot of places in Europe. And it's different in when you play in Europe or a place like Japan. The audience is a little different. Like Japan's, the audience is very reserved,
Right. Just
very
like the
quiet,
culture. Yep.
very respectful. And when you're done, they applaud, and then the applause completely stops. And then, but we were able to, or I was able to just kind of get them to, loosen up a little bit,
Right.
and by talking to them. And Europe is a different thing again because Europe, like, or let's take Italy. We've toured. I toured Italy a lot with Yorma,
Okay.
and we would play in a town in Italy, whatever town that was.
Right.
If it were a small town or big town, and wasn't a festival, let's say, but if it were a small town, the whole town come to see the music because
It's like a wedding. Right.
it's not kind of like a wedding. The grandma, grandpa, little kids, big kids, the
Oh, great.
music fans that all come out, sit in the chairs and watch us and really appreciate it. And there was no, judgment about it. They're coming to see some Americana music.
Right.
So it was really great. And the same could be said about France. I love playing in France, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, London, played London a couple of times,
Nice.
so it's really, an interesting place to play music because they
Wait,
really appreciate the music.
tell me if this is true.
Yeah,
Being an artist, playing in front of different cultures and
right.
different countries, often an artist feeds off the audience.
That's correct.
And I would think that forces you to, every show is really different. Um, that's what I find kind of amazing of touring Europe. Now, you haven't toured Europe with New Riders of the Purple Sage, correct?
No, by the time we joined, we put the New Riders back together in
Right.
2005, it got a little too expensive to do that. It's very expensive to go to Europe to tour. So you got
Sure.
to wait till the dollar does this and
Right.
all stuff that I don't know about, I don't care about.
Yeah, yeah.
So we never did that. Went to Canada a bunch of times.
Okay.
Um, and the Canadian audience, it's cool with us. We had always had a great time there. It's a little tricky going over the border with a band like the New Riders of the Purple Sage for all the reasons you might guess. Uh,
Right. Yeah, I know.
you know,
Right.
you know, if you just look at their song catalog, okay, Border Patrol is going to come on this bus looking for something.
Yeah, so don't chance it, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You know,
Although now things are a lot looser, and you could, if you want
yeah,
cannabis, you can get
not
it.
not when you're going over the border, I don't think.
No, no, no. They want to keep it where they have it.
My favorite time going over the border, they came on the bus and they were asking us, they took us all off the bus and, they were asking us if anybody smoked any marijuana. And my road manager came up with the best line ever because we're at the
Okay.
border now. And he goes, not today.
Right. We're
Never
we're
let us through.
we're being compliant.
Yes, that's correct. Here you go.
Hey, you know what? There's been there's that term, the jam band experience,
Yeah,
which I say in a very loving and respectful way, in that it blends the expertise of different genres in. And if
yes,
you look at the Grateful Dead and the influences of jazz and rockabilly, it's all intermixed and makes for a great
right,
experience.
right.
I got a question for you. What
Sure.
do you think of
Dead and Company?
yeah, what do you think? What's your opinion?
Well, here's my opinion about it. Look, it's keeping the music alive. The songs are great songs. Bobby's a fantastic musician. I think he's probably the most underrated guitar player of all time because he's not a lead
Right.
guitar player. Jerry was really good at what Jerry did, and there's like Carlos Santana, the lead guitar guys. But Bobby, in my opinion, actually invented something that he invented. It's his style of playing
Okay.
that nobody played like that before that, rhythmically. He doesn't just like, I play bar chords, I do this, I do that.
Right.
I play pretty standard stuff, and most people do. But he came up with this thing to be able to go counterpoint to what Jerry was doing and counterpoint to what Phil was doing. And he invented a style of playing that many guys now play. But before that, there was that didn't exist.
Hmm. Interesting.
So I do think that that's an interesting. But as far as Dead and Company goes, look, I know some people love it, some people don't like it. I think it's fine. I think it's good. I think John Mayer does a decent enough job. He's a really talented guy. It's a hard place to be in when you're trying
Yeah,
to fill
agreed.
the shoes of Jerry Garcia, but he's not really trying to do that. I think he's just trying to do his own thing. And I have a lot of respect for him. I saw him one time. We
Hmm.
were at some award ceremony, and they were putting people together to play together.
Okay.
And I read the schedule, and he was going to go out and play with Buddy Guy. And I
Wow.
thought to myself, wow, you're gonna put, because he was a kid at the time, he was young. And I go, wow, this gonna put this kid out on stage with Buddy Guy. It's either gonna be the greatest thing ever,
What disaster.
worst thing ever. I don't know who planned this.
Right.
But he went out there, he went toe to toe with Buddy Guy, who's one of the greatest blues players alive.
Agreed. Yeah.
And he went toe to toe with him, and I thought, from that moment on, I thought, that kid's got my respect. Not that he needs it, but he earned it.
Yeah. Hey, talking about the greats,
Yeah,
I heard you mention in a previous interview about the Three Kings
yeah,
and their influence
right.
on you. Tell me
Yeah.
about that. And do you consider yourself a blues guy, or do you not lock yourself in?
Well, tough question there. No,
I
Three
didn't
Kings,
say it
funny.
was going to be easy, Mike.
Yeah, I mean the Three Kings. Albert King, Freddie King,
And
BB
baby.
King. The three of them are different. I kind of lean towards liking Freddie King the most because it's so, sort of upbeat and rocky.
Right.
Um, do I consider myself a blues guy or this guy or that guy? At the core, I mean, because that's the kind of the first music I heard was the blues, and I sort of like grew on that, and that led me to this, and that led me to that. I mean,
Okay.
let me just rephrase that. After
Sure.
hearing the Beatles, then you start going backwards, you know.
Okay. Right.
But I was fortunate enough that my parents, when they bought their first hi-fi set.
Right.
Back then the hi-fi was the record player was in the TV. It was a TV, record player, radio thing. It was like a piece of furniture.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
usually back then in the early 50s when they bought it, um, when you bought that piece of equipment, you bought it from a an appliance place.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
part of the deal, this is something, it's a mystery to me. I don't know what happened here, but
Okay.
I know that when you bought that a record player TV thing from the appliance guy, they would give you as a bonus, you'd be able to choose some records and take
Okay.
your records home with you, so you have something to play. Because there, at that particular point, there might have been a record store here or there, but not like it became.
Right.
So they had some interesting records. There was like 6 albums when I was like 4, 5, 6, 7 that were on the record player.
Okay.
Because we lived in Center East, there was basically no radio. And so we played these records. One was a Muddy Waters record. One was a
Oh, wow.
Mantovani record. One
Okay.
was a record by Harry Belafonte,
Oh, wow.
Mahalia Jackson. I mean, they were really eclectic collection of records, but those are the records that are there. So then that's what we played. So I was able to hear this, this sort of blues sound early on. Didn't know what it was, but I liked it as a kid. And then, years later, probably a decade later, when the Beatles came, I was just coming of age, and I was thinking, oh, okay, this is
There's something
interesting.
here. Yeah.
I remember the night we saw them. I went to my aunt and uncle's house and sat with my cousins, and my 2 sisters. They were the 3 girls and a couple of their girlfriends. And I
Right.
remember watching the Beatles, and the 3 girls were going crazy. And I'm
Right.
thinking to myself, because I was just beginning to discover girls now. I'm thinking to myself, huh, looking at the
This,
TV, looking at them, going,
hey,
so,
this can work out.
but I really liked the music, and so then I started learning a couple of Beatles songs, and then I started going backwards. I hear one of the songs that they did, and I realized, oh, that's somebody told me, or I somehow researched that, and I even how you do that back then. That oh, that's an old blues song, or that's by Chuck Berry.
Right.
Who's Chuck Berry? Then you go back to Chuck Berry record. So my foundation, I would say, is definitely in the blues. As you know, that's kind of why I was drawn to Hot Tuna at first.
Right.
But I like the feel and sound of country western music, old school country western music.
Mm.
So that's kind of why when in my early bands I was playing Hot Tuna, New Riders, Grateful Dead, Commander Cody was another one.
Right.
Play with
Right.
him a bunch. Um, so yeah, I would say my foundation is in the blues.
Now, I got to ask you this: when you joined Hot Tuna,
Yeah,
okay, um, what was the relationship? Were you the rhythm guy? I
yeah,
mean, or you guys carry your own trade, and did you sing as well? Excuse for the ignorant
right,
questions. What
right.
was the dynamic between you and Yorma coming into
Well,
Hot Tuna?
the reason, in my humble opinion here,
Right.
the reason that I was able to be in Hot Tuna, be in the New Rise of the Purple Sage, go on the road with Garth Hudson, and play with a lot of people I've played with, is because I'm the rhythm guy. I'm not
Okay.
trying to compete with the lead guitar player who's the most famous guy in the band. Yeah.
Right. 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 The front man. Right.
A lot of people ask me that. Why don't you solo? I go, well, it's Yorma's band or it's Dave Nelson's band, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. Um,
Why should I
so,
screw it up?
yeah, so the thing with Hot Tuna, Yorm and I had been playing a little bit, and Hot Tuna they were thinking about getting together again, and he and I at that point, this would be early in '83.
Okay.
Um, he and I were in the studio in Berkeley recording an album. I don't know whatever happened to the album. The studio went out of business. It's probably going to see the light of day someday, as all this stuff does. Um, but one day he said, Jack's going to come by. We're going to talk about this Hot Tuna thing. I said, oh, great, man. And I was pretty excited because I'm thinking, well, Hot Tuna could get back together. That could be cool.
Right. Right.
So Jack stops by and we take a break. We're sitting at the table and they're talking about it. And I'm just like a fly on the wall. I'm not getting in the middle of the conversation.
Right.
I'm a kid. I'm probably in my 20s, late 20s now.
Okay.
Um, or maybe early 30s. I don't remember now. anyway, so they're talking about it, and then it's like a brief, couple seconds of silence, and Yorma looks over at me and says, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think it'd be great. I mean, I'm a Hot Tuna fan, so if Hot Tuna's getting back together, I think it's great." Another moment of silence, and then he says these words, "Okay, we'll do it." The key word in that sentence is "we will do it." We'll
Right.
do it, right? Okay. So I think that's great. I mean, yeah, Jack, I don't remember if Jack played on a song or didn't play on a song, but anyway, Jack splits. We finished the day. And the next morning, a guy by the name of Ronnie Dragon, who was sort of one of Yoma's many managers at the time, called me up.
Right.
He said, "Hey, I'm going over to Yoma's today." He said I should pick you up and come by. You doing anything? I go, "No, yeah, let's go by." He picks me up. Well, he comes to my house. Now, the
Right.
thing with Ronnie Dragon is that he smoked a lot of weed. Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if we could talk about that here, but
Absolutely.
yeah, that's what he did. So, just to get out of the house, you have to smoke like two joints. You know,
That
get
was
in
a
the car,
skill of his, right?
get in,
Okay.
get in the car to go over to Yoma's house. You got to smoke another one. So we pull up in front of Yoma's house, and he says to me, "How much are you going to ask for?" And I said to him,
For what?
"What?
Right.
What are you talking about?" He goes, "So for the tour, how much are you going to ask?" I go, I was like dumbfounded. I don't know what he's talking about. He
Right.
says,
Right. They assumed that you were in, right?
yeah, he did, and they did, and I'm going like, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, "No, the tour, you know, uh, and I'm thinking, oh, they must want me to be a guitar tech, because Hot Tuna is a trio. What do I know?
Low
Uh,
expectations. Good way to
yeah.
go for a
And
humble
then
man.
he goes, "No, no, you only told me to just find out what you need to do the tour. He wants you to. You're in Hot Tuna." I'm going like, "Nah, you're out of your mind. I think he's just too high." But it turned out that's what was happening. So that's how I didn't even know I was in Hot Tuna when I was in there.
That's a
Yeah,
great story. Hey,
yeah,
listen, I saw an episode on YouTube where you played at Daryl's house.
yeah.
And is a keyboard, I think it was, the keyboard player is Professor Louis, is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, tell me about Professor Louis. Tell me about his Woodstock studio. I'm really
Right,
interested in that whole vibe. Is it
right.
still the good vibe still
Oh,
there?
it's still a good vibe studio. LRS Studios. He recorded several of the later band records there with Levon and Rick Danko, and he
Oh,
was in that band with them.
oh
And he and I
wow.
have been friends for years. In fact, we're doing a show, or depending on when this airs, we did a show at the Paramount Theater on the Hudson.
Right.
It's called the Glendale Train to Cripple Creek. We're playing the music of the New Riders and the music of the band.
Oh,
It's a
that's
cool
right up in
show.
Peekskill, if I
Yeah, it's
recall.
in Peekskill.
Right.
So, we've been friends and we decided we're going to give that a whirl. But yeah, he's a great guy, great player. Daryl's house is a fun place to play. I played there multiple times, played there with the New Riders. I played there with the Airplane family. I played there by myself. I've played there with the Englishtown Project. Um, Englishtown Project's an interesting,
Yeah, tell me about that.
because
That's
everybody's from Long Island in Englishtown Project, except for
all
Kurt
right, all right,
Maloney,
great.
who I think is
Good
lived in
tie-in.
Westchester. You know, yeah, the Englishtown Project is one of those bands that often happens with me, where I have an idea to do something, um, do it, and then it takes off. With the Englishtown Project,
Hmm.
everywhere I went with the New Riders of the Purple Sage, somebody would come up to me and say something to the effect of, "I saw you at Englishtown," or "I was at Englishtown. It was my first Grateful Dead show," or something to that effect, right?
Okay.
And so somewhere along the way, and this went on for years, and
Okay.
almost every show.
All
So
right.
somewhere along the way, I thought, it'd be a cool idea. Maybe I should get together with some of my guys from Long Island and just put a band together, play a show, and play the music that was played there that day by Grateful Dead, Marshall Tucker Band,
Right.
and the New Rise of the Purple Sage. And so we decided, yeah, that would be do it. We should do that. And we contacted Pete Shapiro, who runs the Capitol Theater and the Brooklyn Bowls. And he said, "Oh, it sounds like a great idea. Let's do it on the weekend that Englishtown actually happened on, which was Labor Day weekend."
Okay.
So he gave us the Labor Day weekend at Brooklyn Bowl. It was like a Sunday night. And I thought, well, it's Sunday or Saturday of whichever it was,
Of the weekend,
of
yeah.
Labor Day weekend. Nobody's going to be there because
Right, everyone's out of town.
everybody goes out of town. But
Right,
fortunately for us, it was a rainy weekend, and so we went, did the shows. Didn't have any expectation. We were just going to do it to have some fun. And about
right.
500 people showed up. So we thought, wow, okay, there is something here. And so that one show that intended to do is now, I'm guessing, around 160 shows.
Oh, God bless.
And that's with the break for 2020 for COVID and all that.
Yeah, yep.
So it worked out great.
It's not,
And it's been a lot of fun.
what I think is great as I look at your journey and your career is being able to jump between projects.
Yeah.
And you've got 5 decades into the music industry, so there's a lot of knowledge that I'd love to tap into.
Right.
But what I love about music, and this is from a guy from the audience, is just saying, it's like golf. These are one of those things that you can keep on doing no matter, as long as you got
Yeah.
the chops to play. You can be playing with your friends till the day you get called away. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Well, look, I look at my main mentor, Yo McAlkin. He's 84 or 84
Wow.
now. He's out there playing more than he's ever played. He's playing better than he ever played. I mean,
Really?
he's out there doing it. Both he and Jack. Jack, I believe, is 80 something, 81 maybe.
Yep.
I don't want to give him too many years because he might be 82. He's definitely in his 80s. So, but they're out doing it, and I don't see, unless you've got a health issue or something happens that you can't do it anymore, then you continue to do it. There's no real retiring, because even if you can't do it at a high level, you can still go around and play the local.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw them open up and it was a surprise for Tedeschi Trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the Beacon.
That's right.
And I think he came, obviously he must have came on stage later.
Yeah.
With them, and it was great. It was just really nice.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're still able to do it. I'm hoping to be able to do it when I'm that age. I'm 74 now. I don't see myself slowing down anytime soon, unless something happens health-wise, like I said.
Right.
But other than that, you just keep going like the ever-ready battery.
Yeah, well, let's talk about. And by the way, I want to ask the audience, hey, please comment below if you're a fan of New Riders of Purple Sage, Yorma, or Mike, of course. We want to hear from you. Give us some comments. I'm really good on answering the comments. And let's talk about. I pulled up your schedule. You got a great schedule. And by the way, just to tell the audience, look in the description below. You'll see the connection to Michael's website. We'll have a link for that. But so you're in Texas now. That's where we're talking to you from.
Yeah.
And you're coming back east. April 12th, you're going to be at the Paramount Theater in Hudson Valley.
That's correct.
18th, People's Pub, which is right here on Long Island. It used to be
one
the
of my
Grey Horse.
favorite places to play.
Yeah, it used to be the Grey Horse Tavern.
Grey Horse Tavern, right.
And a shout out to Linda Ringhouse, who took it back over. And it's a great place. And very supportive of live music, which is few and far between in many places. Then you're up at Beacon the next day.
That's a town crier. That's right.
Town crier. Then now we jump into May. You're back on Long Island at 89 North, another good venue. Right. Then the 14th, you're in New Jersey, the Ashbury Hotel. May 17th, Turning Point. Anyway, you guys can see all of it in description.
Yeah. The May 17th show is an interesting show, because that show at the Turning Point, I'm myself and Harvey Sorgan, the 1990s drummer for Hot Tuna. We are going to play with. We're going to be the two
features. Okay.
With the two guys from Spiral Eye, which is a Hot Tuna tribute band.
Okay.
And they asked us to do it, and we think, we're both happens to not be working on that weekend, so that should be interesting to me. Get to play some of those old electric Hot Tuna songs that we haven't played in a while.
Yeah, keeping the music alive.
Yeah.
Now I'm a big fan of the band, Levon and everybody, and man, that's my go-to music when I'm talking to the algorithms to say, hey, play the band. But what he seems very mysterious to me, Garth Hudson. Tell me about when you played with Garth, and give me some insights on Garth if you can share that. It'd be great.
Sure. I mean, I spent, I think it was about 2 years with Professor Louis. We went on the road in a thing called Garth Hudson Revisits the Music of the Band.
Okay.
And we went around the country and Canada to play. We played the music of the band, which I've always loved. And Louis was there, in the band for a while.
Right.
And so it was really interesting. Garth is an interesting guy. You could have a very deep guy. You could have a conversation with him, and you're having the conversation, and then when he walks away, you're thinking like, I'm not sure what we were talking about. But he's very interesting and an incredible player. I
Mm,
recorded one of my songs with him called Last Train Out. It's a song I wrote for Alan Woody after he passed away. Alan Woody was the bass player for the Allman Brothers.
okay.
Passed away, and I wrote this song for him called Last Train Out. And Garth played on the song. And so we're in the studio, and we cut the thing live and with Garth. And then Garth, I think, came back in or did an overdub of accordion or something. I don't remember what the overdub was.
Okay.
So we did that, right? And it sounded amazing. It's amazing. So my album called We Are All One,
Right.
um, uh, and um, and so then later after he left, we were listening back, right? And I said, could you mute all the other tracks? I just want to hear what Garth is playing because it
Sure.
just added so much to the song, right? So we took all the tracks away and we played the Garth tracks. It was, I think, piano, organ, and this accordion.
Okay.
And the song is unrecognizable. You wouldn't be able to know what song he was playing. It just sounds like things are happening,
Right.
at
Right.
random, and it was amazing to me. And so Louis then pushed the faders up, and everything fell into the track, and it sounded like everything was perfectly placed. It's like that's how good, that's how amazing a player he was.
That's
And you
that's
can hear
that's
that in the band. A lot of what you're hearing when you hear that is him. you know.
wow, wow. And that's what makes a great artist to me. The one that adds spice to the song, plays to the song,
Yeah.
is not just doing flourishes to
Yeah.
impress you with their acumen, but really
Right.
plays to build it up. And that's
Right.
what my experience personally in meeting with people who mix albums and put them
Right.
together. And they're always excited about it. I keep on going to Mike Nugent because every time I
Right.
go to his studio, he goes, "Oh, check this out.
Right. Right.
This is
Yeah.
what I did.
I
What did
mean,
you think?"
yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do, mixing. And, after everything is said and done, I like to, that's one of my favorite things to do. And my process is a little different than some people's processes.
Hmm.
I like to listen to stuff, pull stuff out, put stuff in, correct this if I can. If I can't, you just leave it.
Right.
That's some people just like to leave everything the way it is. Some people like to, tweak it so much that it sounds a little sterile to me. Um, but that's my process, and I love doing that because now you can really begin to manipulate what you're hearing. You can move this over here, move that over there, because you couldn't hear it because it was like this, but now you can hear it because it's spread apart.
Right.
That
Now, I
kind
want
of
to talk to
yeah,
you about your solo album.
yeah,
You talk about it being old school and the importance of playing live in the studio. And I'm
yeah,
going to tie a thread to this
right,
in that, which I think was a great movie, the Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown,
right,
and the fact they went and played this live. And Timothy Chalamet brought out a good point. He goes, and you mentioned it in your comments just now, it wasn't too clean.
right,
you know, it's very humanized, in my opinion,
right.
by doing it live. Tell me your opinion about old school and playing, the importance of playing live in the
Yeah.
studio.
Well, for me personally,
Yeah.
I always insist whatever I record, be it one of my older albums or my latest one, which is this Christmas album back here that you see this review from Rolling Stone magazine.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
I always insist on everybody playing live in the same room at the same time
Hmm.
because that's the only way you can capture a vibe. Without that, it gets a little tricky, to get a really cool vibe and feel from it. For me, I
Right.
know some people like the what they call bricklay. You play down the bass and drums, then a rhythm
Yeah.
guitar part, then a lead guitar part, then maybe something else, and then the lead vocal, then the background, that doing it that way. I like to do it as live as I can. Now, some stuff has to be overdubbed because maybe one guy plays two instruments,
Right.
like in English Town Project and or Fowls and Friends, which is my thing where I do my original music and whatever else I want to do. Kevin Griffin from Long Island, he
Hmm.
plays pedal steel and guitar. So obviously can't do both of those things at the same time. So one of those, if we're having both of them on a take, he's got it overdub.
Right.
But the whole vibe of the record is the five or six of us in the room at the same time playing together. I'm in the process of recording a new album right now with
Oh,
those.
great.
Probably be out later this year. Um, and that's how I do it. That's how I do all the records. This record here, it was called a Kaleidoscope Christmas,
Okay.
and I had started recording that in 2019, and then
Wow.
2020 happened, and that's a whole nother
Yeah.
story.
The world
But in
blew up. Yeah.
2019, we all went into the studio. It was Tommy Acosta, Cliff Black, the Zen Tricksters, Dave Diamond from the Zen Tricksters, and eventually Jeff Matson came in. So a lot of the guys from the Zen Tricksters are on it, but also we recorded the tracks live. We tracked all the stuff.
Hmm.
And then 2020 happened, and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna ever get this record done. And everybody was home, right? And I know everybody's got a home studio just like I do. I can't really see it here. It's like there
Right.
it is.
Sure.
Um, so I thought, well, let me ask Yorma and Jack if they'd be interested in playing on it. And of course, they said, "Sure, I'll do it."
Nice.
And
Nice.
they overdubbed on it. So now we have a live track with overdub on it.
Okay.
And same thing happened with like Jason Crosby from Jackson Brown's band. He overdubbed on it. So
Mhm.
and then it begins to have a life of its own.
Right.
And then one thing led to another. The album came out. It was probably my most successful record. Maybe part of that was that everybody was still home when it came out because of COVID.
Right.
And so I was able to, I just put a little thing on my website saying, hey, if you want to buy my new Christmas album, you can message me and I'll send you a copy for, I think it was $10 or $15.
Right.
And I sold out the first pressing right away. So
Good for you.
never happens
Right.
that quickly. And then, strangely enough, Rolling Stone magazine got wind of it and heard it and wrote a review of
Uh,
it and said these, in their column, songs you have to hear. Yeah,
oh, that's great.
yeah.
That's great.
It was. I thought it was a joke when my press agent said, Dave Brown from Rolling Stone magazine is going to call you. He wants to do an interview. I go, yeah, right. He goes, no,
Yeah.
no, he's
Yeah.
going
Of
to
course.
call you. I go, what does he want to interview me about? He goes, the record. I go, okay. I still thought it was wistful, but it actually happened.
You know what I find interesting about that live in studio recording, and I've seen this, and I'm a big proponent of live music.
Right, right,
I can hear how somebody records it, but for me,
right.
seeing the dynamic between artists, the
Yeah,
wink and the nod, the communication that goes, like you take it, and I'm picking up on more things now,
right.
and the live performance, and I've seen this with other artists, sometimes takes you in a different direction and then you come back in. It's just, it's magical.
Yeah, well,
It,
that's what happens when I'm recording.
okay.
When almost always I'm recording in sort of a circle so everybody can see everybody. That's number one. So if somebody's doing
Mhm.
something and wants to pass it off to somebody, it's going to happen.
Right.
And you could
Right.
feel it coming.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I think that it's really important to capture that. And the other thing that I do, and most people don't do this, but the way I do it is I just show up with a framework. I don't go in to tell people, look, I'm looking for this specific thing on this part right here. You got to
Right.
play this thing, and then you over here, you play that thing. I like to just let it organically happen, and see what happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Almost always it does work though, for me because I'm not locked into one thing. I don't really know what I want to hear till I hear it. I know what I don't want to hear it when I don't hear it. That I'll tell somebody. I go like, yeah, that's not really the
Not
right.
working for me, right?
That's not working for me. That feel is not happening, or it's too much guitar, or you need to play in another register. I like what you're doing. That's a
Hmm.
different thing.
Yeah,
That's
it's
as far as you're going to get with me as far as guidance, because I want it to be sort of like that organic thing that just happens, and see if you get lucky. I've been
yeah. You know what it is that goes to honestly your generosity
right,
as an artist.
right.
Because hey, I'm sure everyone's worked with that control freak,
Oh yeah,
and that's their thing. Okay, that's their thing. But when you, as the focal point artist, gives
right,
that freedom out, that's where really magical stuff can happen because
right,
you're allowing it. You're taking down the guardrails, so to
right,
speak.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different people, and some people are more in depth about how they do it or what they want to hear. So I
Right.
understand that. I don't think that that's being a control freak, unless you're just a control freak.
Right.
But like I worked with Paul Simon one time, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And it was me, Yorma, Harvey Sorgan, and Steve Rust on
By
bass.
the way, he's going back on the road. He
He's
came out
going
of
back on the
retirement.
road. God
God
bless him.
bless him.
But we worked together, and he was he was great to work with. You talk about a genius in the studio. That's him.
Okay.
But he had something in mind. He wasn't sure quite what it was, and he brought us all into the studio. He saw Young and I and maybe Pete Sears play. I think Pete Sears was on the session too. He saw us play on Long Island at the Stephen Talkhouse, right?
Okay. Sure. Yep.
Now that was like pretty wild in itself, because we're upstairs. I don't know if you've ever been to the Stephen
Yeah,
Talkhouse.
I have. It's to me, it's the CBGBs of the Hamptons.
Yeah, well, they've renovated it now, and it looks much better. But the dressing room is upstairs, so you don't really see the audience till you come downstairs, right?
Right.
So it was in the Yorma Kalkinen trio with me, Yorma, and Pete Sears. And so, it's showtime. So we come downstairs, we're sitting down. I sit, we're getting set, we sit down, and at the table, pretty much right in front of me, is Paul Simon and Edie Brickell. Now, if that's not going to make somebody nervous, I
Yeah.
don't know
Shit.
what is. Maybe
Right.
you,
No
maybe
matter
you,
who you are. Yeah.
maybe you wouldn't be nervous, but I was nervous, and I don't get nervous. I'm thinking, oh my God, what? I'm
You
thinking,
had to sit in front,
you have to sit in front of me. Why can't you move over a table, sit in front of
and
your
it's
mama?
and
Yeah,
it's a very intimate venue.
yeah,
Very
it's pretty small.
right.
Anyway, so after that, after the set break, he and Edie came upstairs, and we had a conversation. We talked for a while, and he asked if we'd come into the studio and work on a tune for his play Cape Man. And so, one thing led to another, weeks or months went by. It all came together. We went up to the studio, the Hit Factory. Well, actually, we rehearsed at SIR first downtown.
Okay.
And, it was interesting. He wasn't really sure what he was looking for. So he said, guys, could we all set up in the room, and he sat in the back, actually. He said,
Hmm.
why don't you guys just play a bunch of different things. And
Okay.
when I hear something that I think I could use for this, I'll let you know. So we played a bunch of
Okay.
things. We played some songs. We played some jams, and then Yorm and I had this one thing that we had. It was like two bits of songs, and we had put them together, and it kind of was like a thing, but it wasn't really a song yet. And so after just doing that, and it's a little nerve wracking because you're waiting for the boss to go, "Hey, yeah, that's what I'm looking for,"
For the nod. Yeah.
you know. So we I talked to Yarn. We started doing that, right, this thing, and then we put the paper down. It came walking over because, yeah, that sounds great. What is that? I go, I don't know. It's a thing. And so we started working on that, and he worked with us on that and played with us, and then we went up the next, I think, for 2 days up at the Hit Factory, and we worked with him, and he just put the songs together, and turned this thing that was nothing into a song. I
Wow.
don't know,
Interesting.
again, if it'll ever see the light of day, but like with most of these strange tunes that wind up on a shelf somewhere, sooner or
Right.
later they see the light of day.
Yeah.
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 But
And
that
that.
was kind of the same way, we recorded exactly the same way. We were all in the room at the same time playing.
Okay.
You know.
And that goes to that. Let's see what
Yeah,
muse hits us to
right.
to take it in a direction.
That's
Hey,
right.
let me
Yeah.
throw a left field question
Yeah.
out because you've to be honest, it sounds like you've had a charmed experience
Yeah, very.
to leave this lowly island and then play with the
Yes.
people you really admire, and
Right.
that's real. And you know what people don't see, I'll get on my soapbox for a minute, is the hard work, and it's not always joyful, and there's
Yeah.
struggles, and you got to woodshed your craft. That's why I love interviewing
Right.
musicians, because you've woodshed something that I've yet to woodshed, but the possibility,
It's always a possibility.
possibilities there. I'm getting long in the tooth, but the possibility is there. But if you went and saw somebody, okay, a young artist, male, female, it doesn't matter, and then you got to talk to them, you saw something there, and they said to you, "Hey, Michael, what are the things you just heard me play? I really want to see some success, however we define it. What are the three things that you would say, hey, here's my advice?" What would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Normally when I go see somebody, if somebody asks, you don't want to be too, even if you thought, well, this was this or that. It's a process that you have to figure out yourself. That's what I would
Okay.
tell. First of all, you have to figure this out for yourself. I can't tell you. Nobody knows.
There's not a recipe, right?
There's not a recipe for success. If there were a recipe for success, I'd be more successful than I am. So would
Touche.
everybody else.
Right.
So, I don't know what's going to happen, but, like if somebody has a song and it's a really great song, and I think, well, what I suggest you do is, that you've got a really strong chorus. So I would build on that. I would like say, maybe if you're going to do the chorus, it's a verse and a chorus and a verse, then do a double chorus, then a break, and then a triple chorus at the end so that you're driving that home. Those kind of little things per song. Or if I see that they're not connecting with the audience at all, if they're just like, looking at the floor and not paying any attention, I'll tell them, look, one of the most important things you can do is connect with the people in the audience, because you want them to come back. And if there's no connection, the music alone is not going to do it, in my opinion. You have to connect with the audience. The audience has got to feel something from it, and they got to, empathize with you. I mean, they got to come back.
Make that connect. They got to make that connection.
It's like, going to see, when I was younger, going to see Led Zeppelin. Right away, I'm looking at these guys, and I'm going, oh my God, and it looked like, you're sitting up front, it looks like they're playing right to me. They know I'm here. Of course, that's not true, but but you have to make the audience sort of, believe it.
Yeah. So, all right, let me review.
One of the other things I always tell people is if somebody comes to you and tells you they know exactly what you should do to become successful, run the other direction, because they have no.
Good point. And you brought out good points, because as an audience member,
right.
I've seen many concerts. My first concert was Marshall Tucker and the Outlaws, a double bill at Nassau Coliseum. And, I didn't realize there were 25-minute guitar solos at the time, because I'm a young kid in high school.
Right.
Saw Jackson Browne. Initially disappointed when I saw him, because the Running on Empty album was out, and I heard the exact album.
Right.
And there was no interplay at that time.
Right.
He's progressed. Right. Jackson, if you're hearing this, my apologies for the criticism.
Right.
But for me, if, like you said, when I'm in that row, I don't care if it's a pub, whatever, if I feel like you just invited me into your living room, I'm coming back for more.
Right. That's the key, I believe, to make people continue to come out,
Right.
But, having seen a lot of bands over the years, sometimes it's enough that it's just so overwhelmingly great that, whether they connect with you or not, you're going to go, oh my God. Like I saw Jimi Hendrix at Stony Brook University.
Come on.
Yeah. Here, I'll show you. Hold on. I'm going to see if we can catch this.
Oh, yeah, please.
I still have this. I don't know. Let's see if we can see this.
Yeah, pull it back. The Jimi Hendrix Experience. Wow, you still have the ticket?
I still have the ticket. $3 to get in.
Come on.
God. Yeah. And
best $3 you've ever spent. I bet.
Yeah, I was aware of him because a friend of mine who was, again, seemed much older, was probably,
A year or 2,
3 years
yeah.
older than I was,
Right.
and had already graduated high school or something. And he got a job doing the window for Harrods in England. So he
Okay.
went over there before. Now, nobody's ever heard of Jimi Hendrix in America yet. Um, and he came back with this album by this guy named Jimi Hendrix. And we were all at my friend's house one Saturday afternoon doing what we did back then.
Right.
It was probably the late 60s, early 70s. And the room is filled with smoke. And we're playing records, right? And he puts this record on, and the record drops. And everybody's talking, and we're having a great time. The record comes on, and it was either Purple Haze or Foxy Lady was the first
Okay.
song.
Dun dun dun
And
dun dun. Dun.
everybody just stopped dead and started
Right.
staring at the record player over there. And we're like, what is that? You know, that really, it was the first time I like some wow, and so that's why I went to see him, at Stony Brook University back when you could put, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 people in a big Chevy Impala and drive out there. No seatbelts. No,
Yeah, no, no. I used to tuck the seatbelts back in the seat,
yeah,
because they
I don't even think the car had seatbelts back then. It was probably
got in the way.
67 or 8 or 9, something like that.
That's amazing. And you
Right.
know what? Being as a musician,
Yeah.
there's always somebody better, different
Oh,
style
absolutely.
blows you away. And you brought up a good point about that connection. We were talking about the connection to the
Right.
audience, and yet there's Dylan who doesn't seem to have any connection to the audience. I'll throw Van Morrison in that pile as well, but then their body of work just overtakes.
Right. But
Yeah,
we're looking at that, what you just said, through the
mm,
lens of today, right?
right,
But
right. Good point.
when they first started, Dylan was very connected to the audience. He was like right there. He was like you were here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you were one with that. And when he went down the street to play somewhere else, you got up and left and went down the street with.
Oh,
And
yeah,
Van
yeah.
Morrison, when he was with them, and even the early Van Morrison, you know, he was connecting with the audience. And then over time, it just becomes so overwhelming that the audience becomes, you know, too demanding, really. I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
think of, I was on the road for a few dates with when Bob Dylan and Phil Lesh were doing a tour together. And
Okay.
Yorma was playing with Phil Lesh, so I went on the tour with him.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so I get to see it up close and personal. If you're Bob Dylan, you're not getting a moment. If you're just out and about, there's no going out and about because you're going to
Yeah,
get mobbed.
that's gone.
Uh, so I can understand that. But I think that they really connected with the audience early on. And then as the thing snowballed to what it became, I think then he had to like pull back. And I just recently saw Dylan, and you're absolutely correct. There's like no connection to the audience whatsoever.
Now, did you speak with him? Did you meet him face to face, or it was more?
On the
Yeah.
on the on the tour I just mentioned, there was two. I didn't speak to him, but there were
Okay.
2 times that our universes collided.
Okay.
Um, so the first time was, on any given night, I think it was that Dylan would go on first, and then Phil would go, and then or vice versa. So Phil was on, and I
Okay.
made friends with Dylan's guitar tech. Right, so
Okay.
I was in his area on the stage watching the Phil show.
All right.
His drummer was playing with him, my good friend, and I was sitting on a road case, big long road case, right?
Yep.
And you know, I'm sitting there watching the show, and then some other guy comes over and sits on the road case next to me. And right away, I could sense, I don't know if it's because the audience sensed something, or
All right.
I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, there's a strange vibe, not a bad vibe, but there's a strange
It's
vibe
different, right?
happening right now. It's like an aura thing or something. And, I look over, and it's Bob. He's got a baseball cap on, he's got his hoodie up.
Okay.
And he's just sitting there watching the show. And so we
Taking it
watched the
in.
show together for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And that was that, right? So that was probably the next night. When you're playing these giant arenas,
Yeah.
the stage is here, let's say, and then you got to walk through these a long walkway to get to the outdoor to get to your bus, right?
All right.
And they had taped off a walkway. And Bob's security team had said, "Listen, when the show's over and Bob's leaving with his band and everybody, could everybody just stay on the other side of the white lines and let them leave the venue on, without bothering him?" Yeah, no problem,
Right.
no problem.
Sure.
So about halfway out, I was talking with John Cutler, who was the sound man for the Grateful Dead, and
Okay.
he was also the sound man on the Bob Dylan and Grateful Dead tour. And we're on the other side of the white lines, and we're talking, blah blah blah, because I had met him a couple of years before, and I know his brother, Bill Cutler. He produced one of my CDs. So we're talking, and the show ends. The big doors come bursting open, right?
Okay.
Bob Dylan and his whole entourage are coming towards us.
Okay.
So, but we're just talking, but now we stop talking because we know they're going to come by
Yep.
and we just don't want to get in the way or anything. So we're on this side of the white line.
Right.
And as they're coming towards us, see Bob, he's kind of like, he's not going straight out the line now, straight out the
Okay.
walkway. He's kind of coming sort of towards us. Now I'm realizing, no, he's not coming sort of towards us.
He's coming
He's
to.
coming towards us. No, he's coming to us. Turns out he wasn't coming to me,
Okay.
but he was coming to say hi to John Cutler. So the most I got out of him was, hey, and talk to John, because that was kind of funny for me to be that
Yeah.
close to that greatness. But the funny thing was about that particular tour, I saw him it was a 3-night run, and we
Hmm.
were there for the 3 nights. The first night he went out, he sort of looked very frail, like a pope or something.
Okay.
The way he was dressed, and it was like it was just frail. He
Hmm.
was powerful but frail looking, right?
Right.
And the next night he came out, we had the cowboy hat on and the cowboy boots and the Western suit, and he was like this bigger guy. He was like
Really.
a chameleon.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
really amazing. It was fun.
Yeah. I look at you look at Dylan, and this may be two different. I look at Dylan and Lady Gaga,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They handle it both different ways, but
right,
the can't like she said, there's always a camera on me
right.
all the time,
All the
all
time.
the, and I think the common denominator is they do um, rebrand themselves out in many different ways, and the fact that Dylan is still touring is just kind of
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. I just recently saw him. He was. It's a whole different thing. It's like watching a painter paint a new painting every night. He's not going to paint the same painting.
Right.
He's not going to paint the Mona Lisa. He's going to paint this new painting every night. It's going to be a little different, and it's sort of hypnotic. I felt that's how I got. That's what
Now,
I.
when you last saw him,
Yeah.
did he? I heard he was really going more towards the piano as opposed to the guitar. Was that
He was at
what
the
you experienced?
piano most of the night. I think on that particular night he played one or two songs on the piano. I mean on the guitar, but mainly piano. And he had a
Hmm.
killer band. His bands were always top musicians. And there was a lot of what I interpreted as interpretation. They were just
Okay.
like going along, whatever. It wasn't like, well, this is the arrangement we had from 2 nights ago, so we're just going to play this. It's like one of those things. It's like playing with some of the old blues guys. You had to stay on your toes. You had to pay attention because they're going to go anywhere they want to go. Yeah,
Right. Right. Well,
you know?
I remember an interview with somebody in Tom Petty's band. The only time I saw Dylan is when he toured with Tom Petty at Madison
Right,
Square Garden, which is amazing.
right,
But they said he would typically, you didn't know where he was going.
right.
He would change the tempo, he would change the key,
That's right.
and what I think is, not to get into Dylan's head, if that's
Right.
even possible, is that puts you on the edge, right? That
That's right.
draws your attention. You're not going to wander off and phone it in.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Well, that I think is his main thing, and he did it with the Grateful Dead too. They'd work out songs at sound check, or they'd work out songs at the rehearsals, and then
mhm.
they get to the venue in front of 60,000 people, and instead of being in the key of G, he'll do it in the key of C, and instead of slow, he'll do it fast, or vice versa. You know, and often Jerry would have to listen and then go, "Okay, got it. It's this song," and then everybody jumps in.
That's funny.
But it keeps everybody on their toes, and it keeps everything fresh.
Yep.
That's I think his main goal.
Now, did you have a relationship or have any connection with Jerry Garcia himself?
No, met him one time. Um, interesting turn of events, how that happened.
Mm.
But no, we never, played together or anything. I've played with all the other members of the Grateful
Yeah,
Dead.
the late Phil Lesh, right?
Yeah, late Phil Lash, Bob Weir many times. In fact, my first tour that I went on with Hot Tuna was Hot Tuna and Bobby and the Midnights.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and we got to, at one point, we started doing a jam at the end of the night. And, now really in heaven. I'm on tour with Hot Tuna. Bob Weir's sitting in the room with us and he's talking to me like I'm one of them, you know.
Yeah, right,
You
right,
know,
right.
and I'm just like, this is wild, And I remember we were going to do a jam on something. I think we are going to do the Ray Charles song "Let's Go Get Stoned,"
Oh yeah, okay.
and or we wanted to do that, and and Bobby, said, yeah, that'd be cool. And then he looks at me and goes, "You want to sing it?" Because I'm
Come on.
thinking one of those guys who got to sing. I'm not singing it. He goes, "You want to sing it? You sing it?" I go, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "Okay, great." Next thing I know, we're on stage and we're doing it.
Just like
No
that.
time to think about that. So
Wow.
it was really great. Bobby's a really nice guy, really great player, like I said earlier, and very supportive of whatever. I've never heard him say like something negative about something.
Yeah, yeah, that's the I interviewed a gal, really great, Leslie Mendelson.
I know
Who,
Leslie. Yeah,
do you know Leslie?
yeah, yeah,
I'm really watching her career. She's a real sweetheart of a
yeah,
lady.
yeah.
And if you're listening, Leslie, shout out to you. I really had a great opportunity to interview her, and she did a duet with Jackson Brown, and
Right,
and is connected to Bob somehow,
right,
and small world, right?
right,
We're all just regular people,
right,
although I'm a little starry eyed
right.
when it comes to things.
Yeah,
Hey, Michael,
yeah.
I got to tell you, I really appreciate spending this time with you and getting your insights. Again, the people who are listening or watching on YouTube, look into the description. Tell us what you know. Go see Michael. He's coming to the East Coast
Right,
here on Long Island and parts of Rockland and
right.
Westchester County. So,
Yeah, we'll be all summer. We'll be in the Northeast and the Mid Atlantic. Like I said, I have this thing called the Englishtown Project. We play on Long Island. We're going to be at the landmark on Main,
oh yeah, that's Port Washington,
Port Washington, in July. It's always a fun place to play.
July
Um,
18th. Yep,
yeah,
landmark. I've
and
not been there yet.
and we're going to have some special guests come and play with us. So keep your eye open for that one, and you could get that information at EnglishtownProject.com.
Wonderful.
And, it's always great for me to come back to Long Island or go back to Long Island and play music because, I travel around a lot. There are little pockets around the country. There are not many anymore
Okay.
where the music is really happening. It's always happened on Long Island.
Wow, that's very nice.
Always a ton of magnificent, very great players. I could go down the list of them. They're all great.
Right.
And there's a pocket of that in Asbury Park. That little scene there's the same. In
Hmm.
north of San Francisco, where Sweetwater and that little area
Yeah.
is another little pocket of great music happening. But it used to be every city had their thing and every
Right.
town had their thing. It's not so much anymore. But Long Island, with the amount of talent that's on Long Island, whatever genre you're in,
Agreed.
you
Agreed.
know, uh, blues, you got a number of people who are fantastic at that. Toby Walker's back on Long Island now.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he's a magnificent player. You should have him on. Kane Daly. There's just so many of these guys in the blues world that are just fantastic.
Nice.
It'd be nice
Well,
to see some of them be able to get out and get in, go national, but that's a tough thing to do. It's a
it's
thing to
yeah.
go
It
a state away, 100 miles away.
right. Right. And we can get into just the whole what venues look for. It's the decade of the tribute band.
Right,
And that has its place, but I think it can also hinder original music,
right,
or not.
right.
Or build on.
Yeah, I mean the tribute thing that just kind of like erupted, and mainly
Yeah.
because of the Grateful Dead. That's the whole thing started.
Right.
Um, and now it's just become a thing. And mainly, again, to go back to the song, people just want to hear those songs. That's it.
Right.
Uh, And if you can execute them really well, all the better. And the ones that can do it really well rise to the top, or the ones that have been around longer rise to
Right.
stay at the
Right.
top.
That keep at it.
Like for instance, in the Grateful Dead world, there's a million of those Grateful Dead tribute bands, but there's only a handful. I can only think of maybe two that actually tour nationally.
Yeah. There's
Everybody else is local.
yeah, Jimmy Fleming, who's
Right, Jimmy. He's got the
Jimmy.
electrics.
You know Jimmy?
Oh,
Yeah.
Jimmy. I've never played a gig on Long Island that Jimmy Fleming has not played with me on.
So Jimmy now just moved to
South
Myrtle
Carolina.
Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carolinas. He plays in Mike Nugent's The Blue Moon Band,
Right.
along with Diane Lotney, and he's one of those guys, just like Mike. You look at him, go, man, he just adds such beautiful spice.
Yeah, almost every gig, and I'm exaggerating only slightly, that I've played on Long Island, Jimmy's played. I had him. I think every time the new writers came to Long Island, I had him play with us.
Oh, that's great.
Every time I've played with anybody, like I've played the Bolton Center on Long Island probably more than any other place.
Yeah, they just refurbished it too, by the way.
I was there in 2024. I played there. We did two sold out shows there. One in
great.
January, one in later on in I think July or June.
That's pretty good for January.
Yeah, that sold out quick. And Jimmy played both of those with us. And he's played, I don't know, just about every place I play on Long Island. Every time I'm at 89 North, he's on stage with us. I love Jimmy. He's a great player, great mandolin player, great fiddle player, great guitar player. And the fact that he can play mandolin and fiddle puts him in a different bracket than just the guys who. There's a lot. Long Island has a lot of really great guitar players.
Right.
So that's lead guitar players. So that's a tough hall to be walking down.
Yeah. So the fact that he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he's probably just like Mike, he's one of the most humble guys in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and a really nice guy. I was hoping to put him on the Landmark show, but unfortunately he's got something else he's doing that time. When I left the East Coast to come to Dallas, because my daughter lives here and my grandkids and the kids and whole acts.
Sure.
But I also have a place in Union City, New Jersey, because I go back and forth so much,
Right.
But he was asking me, well, how do I do it? I said, well, I leave my East Coast gear on the East Coast,
Okay.
and my West Coast and my Dallas gear there. And then you just fly in, you put some dates together in a cluster, and then you come in, you play the dates, and you go home. And he said, yeah, that's what I plan on doing. And so that's what he does. He's got some gear that he leaves up on Long Island and comes back in, goes back down, and he's close enough that the plane flight is probably super cheap. Although,
zip.
Although at this day and age, nothing is super cheap.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. It's been crazy.
Fares. The reason I got a place in Union City was because hotels got so expensive that I couldn't afford to do it.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Mike, what a surprise that you reached out to me through Facebook. And
I saw it on Facebook or maybe on YouTube, and I thought, the Long Island Sound, I got to get on there.
Well, here you are. We're going to have this out right quick, and what a pleasure! What a pleasure! I tell you, we got 2 or 3 more episodes with you for sure. Because I'm sure
I'll come back anytime you want. I had a great time talking with you. There's a million other things we could talk about. I got a million other stories I could tell you.
Wonderful.
So you want me back? We'll be in touch now. And
the first thing is I'm going to do my best to see you at People's Pub.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I'm in Babylon, so it's stone's throw away. So
That's
it's great. All right, everybody. Till next time, as I always say, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well, everyone.
Be kind.
And be kind. Amen.